Weeden, who began telling stories over 30 years ago, starting with a bilingual reading session at the local library. She realized that the children were engaged with the English text, but were less interested in the Spanish translation. When she closed the book and began telling the story directly to them, the impact was immediate. Kay wrote and performed this bilingual story for her first WSCAD 20-ish years ago. So coming up, Kay.
Thank you very much. Hace muchos años, many years ago, en México, el sur de México, había una familia. There was papá, of course, mamá, y los hijos. And I do mean los hijos, because when you live on a farm, una granja, and your life, la vida, is trabajando, growing, you need muchos hijos. Una vida tan dura, a very difficult life. And in particular this year, tan dura, because la lluvia, falta la lluvia, there was no rain, and the plants were drying up. La comida, what they had to eat was poco y poco y poco, less and less and less, day after day. Sin comida, without much food, la familia, well, they just lose something. They're just not as happy as they could be. Muy temprano en la mañana, papá y los hijos, off they went, sunrise, out to work en el campo, trabajando. And mamá en la casa, also trabajando, doing all sorts of things como mamá. She suddenly heard a en la puerta. Opening up the door, here stood un anciano, a small, shriveled, shaggy-looking old man. He looked up at her. Señora, buenos días. Comida, algo para comer. Asking her for food. Now, mamá, with her familia and all of the hijos, I mean, she barely had enough food for her own familia. Do you think, really, that she is going to give some desconocido, somebody that she has never, ever met before in her life, some of their precious food? Well, sí, claro, of course she is. She's a buena persona. She's a good woman. She invited the anciano in. The old man took a seat in la mesa, and she went to prepare tortillas. She made him dos tortillas, set them on a plato in front of him, and in 2 segundos, he had eaten them both. Muchísimas gracias, señora. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much. And then he reached into his bolsillo, and he pulled out una semilla de maíz, one kernel of corn, and he held it out to her. Mama reached out her mano, and he put the semilla in her hand, and she stared. He said, Señora, maíz feliz. ¿Qué? ¿Ah? Sí, señora, maíz feliz, maíz feliz, maíz feliz. And with that, singing the entire time, he bolted to the door, opened up la puerta, and se fue. He was gone, leaving Mama holding the maíz. Now, Mama, muy sabía, she knew lots of things, and she had heard muchas historias, muchos cuentos about, semillas and things like that, she wasn't quite sure of las historias, but ¿por qué no? Why not? So she took la semilla, opened up la puerta, outside, she dug un hueco, dropped in la semilla, poured on agua, and waited. Rata, nothing, nada. She was not feliz. And neither was Papa when he came home that afternoon and found out that Mama had given away some of their precious comida. Oh, tan enojado, he just went off to bed and didn't get out. La próxima mañana, a las 7 de la mañana, 7 o'clock in the morning, Mama se levantó, got up, abrió la puerta, and ay, 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 una planta de maíz, a huge corn plant about this tall, and right here, una mazorca de maíz, one relatively large ear of corn. Ay, 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 ¿qué es it? Increíble. Oye, todos, vengan, vengan, come on, get up. They all got up and came out and looked, and together, como familia, they grabbed the mazorca, they pulled it apart, they shucked it, they shelled it, they ground it into masa, and they began to make tortillas. Tortitas para mamá, tortitas para papá, las bonitas para papá, las quemaditas para mamá. I know you've always wanted to do this, so here we go. Tortitas para mamá, tortitas para papá, las bonitas para papá, las quemaditas para mamá. That means that dad gets the good ones, mom gets the burned ones. La vida, that's the way it is. Mamá took las tortillas and put them down on la mesa en un plato. And toda la familia, they gathered around, sat down, and then bendiciones, their prayers. They each took each other's manos and closed los ojos. Gracias a Dios por toda la comida que before they could do anything, up jumped the tortillas, and they began bailando, dancing, and cantando. Me gusta bailar, me gusta cantar, la 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 la. I love to sing, I love to dance, la 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 la. Has that ever happened to you? No. It never happened to them before either. They backed away from these locas tortillas. No idea what was possessing them. And the tortillas continued bailando, bailando, bailando. From the mesa, the table, down to the floor, and bing, 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 right out the door. No, cried Papa, racing out the door after them, but se fueron. They were gone.
Oh, no.
Do you think Papa was feliz?
No.
Frustrado, so frustrated. Off he went with los hijos out to the fields, trabajando, trabajando, trabajando el día. Nothing else happened. La próxima mañana, the next morning, a las 6 de la mañana, mamá se levantó, up she got, abrió la puerta, and, por favor, otra mazorca, más grande. Oye, todos, vengan, 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 vengan a ver. They all got up and came out together. They took it off, they shucked it, they shelled it, they ground it into masa, and they began tortillitas para mamá, tortillitas para papá, las bonitas para papá, las quemaditas para mamá. Mamá, muy sabia, very wise. This time she put them in una canasta, a basket with una tapa. She was ready. And then, setting it right back down in the middle of the la mesa, they all sat down, took each other's manos, and began their prayer. Gracias a Dios por toda la comida. Bing! It stopped nothing. Up popped the tapa, out jumped the tortillas, and they began. Me gusta bailar, me gusta cantar, a la 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 la. I love to sing, I love to dance, a la 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 la. Papa, he also jumped up, and this time, boom! He shut la puerta. Those tortillas were not going anywhere. And then, un poquito menos nerviosos, a little less scared of this whole thing, they watched the tortillas bailando, cantando. Oh, they were getting pretty hungry, but y'all know the thing about tortillas, don't ya? Flacas, skinny, cantando, bailando, and boop, 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 debajo, underneath the door they went. Oh. No, cried Papa, and quickly opened up la puerta, but desaparecidas, they had disappeared, gone. You think Papa was feliz? Oh no, frustrado, enojado, he just, and off they went. And todo el día, well into la noche, trabajando, trabajando, trabajando. La próxima mañana, a las 5 de la mañana, mamá se levantó, llegara, abrió la puerta. Ay, por favor, por favor. Oh no. Ay, Chihuahua. Qué grande. Super grande. And this time, Mama sabía en silencio. Mama sola by herself grabbed it off. And she sola en silencio. She shucked it, she shelled it, she ground it into masa. She began, tortillitas para mamá, tortillitas para papá, whatever. She made all the tortillas, put them in una canasta. And this time, she put her hand right on top of it. And then she called La Familia. Oye, todos vengan, ven, ven, ven. Quietly, they got up and moved toward La Mesa. Mama also moving toward La Mesa, reaching over and setting La Canasta right in the middle of the table. They all sat down, Mama keeping La Canasta covered with la mano. And just as they were taking each other's hand, it began to rumble. Oh no, oh no, 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 no puedo. She couldn't do it, and boom, out jumped tortillas, bailando, cantando. Me gusta bailar, me gusta cantar, a la 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 la. I love to sing, I love to dance, a la 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 la. Papa, harto, fed up, he'd had enough of this. He raced over and boom, made sure la puerta was closed, and then he put his pies right in front of it. Those tortillas really were not going anywhere. And La Familia, this time very, very used to las tortillas bailando, just watched these locas tortillas bailando, cantando, dancing all over la mesa, la silla, the floor, all over, until Papa no podía aguantar más. He couldn't take it anymore. He was so hungry. He cornered the smallest tortilla. You, yeah, I'm talking to you. Yeah. Oh, te gusta bailar, huh? You like to dance? Well, you know what? A mí me gusta comer. I like to eat, and I'm going to eat you. Oh, no, señor. Oh, por favor. No me comas, Tonipi. No. Es que me gustaría bailar con usted. The tortilla had just asked him to dance. Papá no sabía qué hacer. Whatever. He picked up la tortilla and me gusta bailar, me gusta cantar, la, me gusta cantar, la. It felt pretty good. He picked up otra tortilla. Me gusta bailar, me gusta cantar, la, me gusta bailar. And everybody, la familia, hijos, mamá, everyone picked up tortillas. Me gusta bailar, me gusta cantar, la. All kinds of singing and dancing going on, hora tras hora. Who knows when it ended, but it did end with everybody dormidas, fast asleep on the floor. And do you know what woke them up? El olor de tortillas. Mama was the first to lift her head, and en la mesa, un plato, una pila de tortillas like this tall. Oye, familia, mira. And they all peeled themselves off piso looking, and tortillas. Muy lento, despacio, they stood up, and the tortillas were still there. Slowly, they walked toward la mesa, sat down. Las tortillas were still there. They took each other's manos, closed their eyes. Gracias a Dios por toda la comida que usted nos da. They were still there. And then each of them reached and took una tortilla. And, deliciosas. Oh my goodness, they were the best tortillas. 2 tortillas, 3 tortillas, so many tortillas. They couldn't eat anymore. And when they could not eat más tortillas, Mama picked up that plato, abrió la puerta, and off she went down the road to los vecinos, the cousins, the neighbors, the friends, everyone else who did not have enough to eat. She wore sonrisa, a big smile, because el anciano, he was right. Maíz,
Feliz.
colorín colorado, este cuento se ha acabado.
Thank you so much, Kay. That story made us feliz.
Muy feliz.
So next I'm going to introduce Paul Akert, who is a well-known Wisconsin performer who has made his appearance at the Bristol Renaissance Fair, Discovery World, Wisconsin Club, and more. But he's not Paul. You're going to have to guess who he is. Coming up, made of mystery.
An icy adventure with a no-good dog. High in the Sierras, I saw a glacier. This ancient ice most likely carved out the Great Valley. I must go to Alaska to see the living glaciers that will support my theory. In the summer of 1880, I was near Fort Wrangell, which is on an island in Alaska, the southeastern icy areas of Alaska. I was aboard our large canoe. The paddlers were at the ready. Our gear was stowed where it needed to be. But where was my companion, Reverend Hall Young? Finally, he came aboard, and he was followed by a little black dog who promptly curled up among the baggage. I looked at that little dog and I went, he has no business being on this Alaskan voyage. I told Reverend Hall that this was not a good idea. He should just put him back on the wharf and let the children play with him. But Reverend Young assured me that he was the finest of dogs. He could take cold and hunger like a bear. He could swim like a seal. And he was wondrously full of wisdom. All right, if you insist, I carried it on, but I thought this is still no place for this poor dog. He would want to be coddled like a baby. He's going to be through weeks and months of rain and snow. This is no place for him. Well, we were on our way to Glacier Bay when a large chunk of ice fell from a glacier. Crush! We were all trying to keep the canoe from tipping over. All of us, except Stickeen. Oh, he was named Stickeen after the Stickeen Indians on Wrangler Island. His nose was on the prow, and when the water quieted, he was soaking wet. Oh yeah, he's gonna want to be coddled and somebody to towel him off and make him feel better. He saw me looking at him. He crawled between my legs and shook himself off. Hall and the rest of the crew hooted and hollered and laughed while I stood there dripping. Well, my adventure with this little dog continued, and soon we were at camp. On the morning of August 30th, a storm was brewing, and I could not wait. I grabbed a piece of bread. I really wanted a cup of coffee, but I did not want to take the time. And as I'm making my way through that wind-laden gale, I noticed that the little dog had left the minister's tent and was aiming to follow me. I looked back at Stickeen. I went, this day has nothing for you. Go back and eat your breakfast. And I made my way on, and as I was looking around, he was still following me. Well, come along if you must. And I had an extra piece of bread in my pocket, and I gave it to him. And we made our way across that glacier. It was hardest of work. We would jump over fissures, mini crevasses, if you will, until we came to a crevasse of appalling width and depth. Prior to that, I'd found ice bridges, and I would take my ice axe and chip it off and make my way across like a boy riding a rail fence. But this one was 8 feet long, and there was no ice bridge. As we looked up and down, that was the narrowest portion, and this was as far as I would be able to jump. So I was worried about doing this because the west side, which we were on, was about a foot higher than where we would be jumping to. So I took my ice axe and carved out a notch on the rounded brink and leapt. Made it to the other side, but it was all my effort it took to be there. And I further regretted the possibility that I might have to retrace my steps. Little Stikine, however, bounded it over without a second thought. And we ran over smooth, tempting ice, and we thought we had all danger behind until we came to the widest of longitudinal crevasses we had yet seen. This one was about 50 feet wide, and the only ice bridge we saw was at an angle, so it was longer than 50 feet. And it was the worst of the ice bridges I had seen. Not only was it the worst of the ice bridges, but it was 8 feet down to access it. And in the center, it dipped down about 20 feet, came back up, and another 8 feet back up on the other side. I did not want to try retracing that jump. So I dared the danger, and I started cutting my way down. As I'm starting down, Stikine is running along the brink and howling, and I swear if he could give me words, he was saying, "Surely you don't want to go down there." But I made it down, and I slowly inched my way across, cutting the top flat about 4 inches wide so that little Stikine could follow me. And finally, I made it to the other end. And I made a little platform so I could stand out and cut out handholds and footholds. My fingers were frozen, but I made it to the other side. Stikine was still at the brink on the other side, and the more I encouraged him, the more he howled. He was frightened. But finally, he quieted, and he put his little feet down and started making his way across that ice bridge. While snow was falling, the wind was moaning and threatening to blow him off. Finally, he was at the foot of the brink, and I was kneeling down there, ready to help him up and over, because dogs are not good climbers. Well, he eyed up my handholds and my footholds, as if holding them in his brain. And with a spring, he leapt up and over me and began rolling and howling and crying. But this was crying for joy, for he came from depths of despair to triumphant joy. We made our way back down towards camp, and I could tell by the ice lines we were getting close, and the crew at the camp were firing guns to help us find our way. And there was a fine fire and a meal there when we arrived, though they were concerned that they might have to seek me in the morning, a care not often applied to me. After that, Stikine and I were transformed. We were changed. Stikine would follow me wherever I went, and during the evening campfire, he would rest his head on my leg. Now, this is a dog, even though he was petted and cared for back on Wrangel Island. He didn't seek out being petted like other dogs might do. We were changed. As I write this, I look back, and I feel like in the heart of it again. I can hear the roaring wind roaring like it did before. I can still see a little Stickeen going up and down the brink. I can hear his cries of fear and his cries of triumphant joy. I've known many a dog whose wisdom devotion I could write about, but there was none like Stickeen. For truly he brought the light, like through a window I could see him, and through Stickeen, who I'm ever grateful, I could see by his range of emotions that I am connected to all the creatures on the earth. To me, he will never be forgotten. Though I tried to find him after I returned to my work in California, and I wrote Reverend Young to find out because I wanted to know what happened to him. He told me that in 1883, a tourist had stolen him, and the last he saw, he was off on a steamer. So we do not know what happened to him. Perhaps he's gone now. Perhaps he's crossed that last crevasse and come onto another. I will never forget him. To me, he is immortal. This was truly an icy adventure with a very good dog. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And could you guess who that was? Yeah, yes, I heard a John Muir. That's right. Yes. So it's pretty amazing that he survived that adventure. And also I think that Stickeen had a little more sense than Muir did. At least they both went over the first crevasse, but the second one.